Thanks for checking out this show review. So, if you remember, I actually did a review of the first 3 seasons of Dragula plus their Resurrection special that was on Shudder back in October, I believe, just to get ready for season 4 starting. So now season 4 is done. I actually was watching the episodes like the day they were hitting, like that night when they were hitting Shudder. With my wife, because we've gotten very big into Dragula. It is a very fun show. It is really well pulled off for the most part. I do have things I don't like about the show, and I'll talk about those here. I already talked about some of that for the seasons 1 through 3 plus Resurrection special video, and some of those still ring true. I will say, though, it does seem like the show does get more refined over time, and I think that season 4, production-wise and quality-wise, is the best. They do keep getting better and better and better, and I love that. And they've already been renewed for a season 5 with Shudder, which I'm very excited about. If you don't know, Dragula season 1 was on YouTube, then seasons 2 and 3 were on Netflix, then the Resurrection special was on Shudder, and then obviously season 4, and now we'll be getting a season 5 on Shudder. I really, really hope that this becomes a permanent home for Dragula with Shudder, because it makes sense. They totally fit on Shudder as a home, because it's about horror. I mean, obviously, it's like a drag show that's kind of like RuPaul's Drag Race, obviously, but it's its own thing. It kind of takes that and it does its own twist. It's about horror, glamour, and filth, essentially. And it is very fun. If you're into performance art, and that's totally what this is, it is performance art. But there's a bit of like a reality show aspect to it, not just in the competition sense, but you get drama that happens within it, which is, just bound to happen with shows like this where people are in, close proximity to each other, competing against each other, big personalities involved. Sometimes you do kind of roll your eyes at some of the drama that occurs, but a lot of people would be lying to themselves if they didn't admit that the salaciousness of drama happening in shows like this is intriguing, and it kind of pulls you in. So unfortunately, that's me. Like, sometimes when things are getting real on the show, I'm just like, ooh, just saying. Anyway, so season 4 was for 2021. Very much looking forward to season 5. Don't know when that's going to come out, though. I assume they're going to start getting to filming it in not too long, but they start big with this one, as far as how they introduce I was going to say characters, because I'm just so used to talking about films. How they introduce the contestants, the drag show artists, and they do it in a very big, interesting way that I kind of feel like is a statement of like, this is what the show is on Shudder. This is how we're going to be on Shudder, and so I like that. So they went big, and then they get into the first floor show pretty quickly, which I'm all about. There is drama off the bat naturally, which is something that occurs with this show. Didn't really happen so much in season 1. There wasn't a lot of that, but ever since it got to Netflix and then moved to Shudder, there's always that drama that kind of pops up, which I'm sure when they're making the show, they want that because it sells. The same issue remains of the skits. So the Boulet Brothers always have these short intro skits that they do, and usually they are heavily featured in those. They're not great. Like, I'm never that interested in them. I don't think they're pulled off that well. They always go on too long. Editing has been and is currently still an issue with the show. They have a tendency to just let things go on too long. I don't know if they're intentionally stretching it to get around a certain runtime, because it seems like all their episodes are about an hour, sometimes a little bit over. So it seems like they have an idea that they want to hit about an hour. Now, I don't know if that's like a contractual thing with Shudder or not, but there are these moments, many moments, where they just stretch these scenes, especially with these opening skits, and it's just not interesting. It starts to kill the pacing. It's boring. It's not engaging. And that's one of the biggest issues with this show. Literally, there are times that my wife and I have fast forwarded because it's just not interesting and it's going on too long and it's time to just be done. Just saying. And there's something else, like a specific situation with that that I'm going to talk about a little bit later in this review. Oh, by the way, no spoilers. I'm not doing any spoilers in this because if people have not watched season 4, I don't want to ruin anything for you. So I won't be talking about any contestant by name. I won't be talking about who's winning or anything like that. So no spoilers. So the intro skits are one of my biggest issues. You get the idea there are actually certain individuals that the Boulets give a lot of slack to due to their reputations coming into the competition. There are certain people who are very established within the drag community who you feel like during the show they're being given a lot of rope. They're given a lot of slack and allowed to stay in the competition probably a lot longer than they should because of who they are. Which, it bothers me at first, but honestly, as long as I feel like they're not actually going to be in like the top, or they're going to actually potentially be pushed into winning the whole thing, it doesn't bother me as much. Like initially it started really bothering me. I was just like, no, they should be going home. But because of who they are in the drag community, it feels like they're not. And part of that could just be my perception because, you know, obviously I'm not in the drag community. It is something that I think is really cool and I have an appreciation for it, but I'm not in the drag community, so there's a lot of stuff I don't know. So this, you know, obviously this is all personal opinion. This is what I see in it. And a lot of people would probably disagree with me on this stuff, but these are just my things that I see in it. I will say that episode 7 of the show I thought was terrible. The pacing was really bad. It was a really boring concept, which, you know, it sucks when you get those, but for the most part, the show is really good, and each episode really hits well. It really runs well for the most part, except for those pacing issues I was talking about. So if there's one bad episode, yeah, it sucks at the time, but when you step back from it, you're like, it's one bad episode, whatever. Like, there's so much good content that's packed into this that it's definitely forgivable. So, but just letting people know that episode, if you hit that episode and you're like, oh my God, is this what it's going to turn into? No, they bounce right back in episode 8. Trust me, we're sticking with it. There are some extermination challenges that actually feel very weak and out of place. For the most part, their extermination challenges really do feel like they all fit together and they're in the same spirit. But there are a few in season 4 that are totally mismatched. They don't seem like they should be extermination challenges based off what they typically are. And they're just weak. And you just see them and you're just like, huh? This is an extermination challenge? How? And I think there were 2 of them. Now it's not like rampant throughout the season. There were 2 of them in particular that you're just like, this is... okay, I don't understand. So I don't know if it was like they were running out of ideas, they didn't really know what to do, or if they just had this idea and really thought it worked well, but it just didn't. So I don't know, but just another thing to point out. The introduction to the finale is something they've never done before, and I liked it. It was a very... It's done well. It tonally doesn't feel like it fits with the show, but it's also really good. It's kind of weird thing where you're taken aback at first because you're just like, this is very different. Like, it feels like it doesn't fit with the show. They've never done anything like this before. But then you're just like, oh, it's well done. And in another show, this would feel very at home. So you're just a bit confused in the beginning. I liked it. It gets a little more kind of introspective and emotional. And I like that aspect of it. So it was cool to have that there. But like a bunch of stuff, it goes on way too long. And when things go on too long, they start to lose their impact. They start to lose their luster. And that's what ends up happening with it, unfortunately. It's obvious that the Boulet brothers have huge egos. And it really does get in the way of the show at times. The skits being one of the big things. The worst example of this is that in the finale episode, when they use the show to plug their podcast. Very tacky. I understand that they're business people. They definitely are business people. Like, this is a business for them. They're pushing it. It's their brand. It's who they are. You know, obviously it's the Boulet Brothers Dragula. You know, they're a big part of it. Just like RuPaul's Drag Race. It is a lot about RuPaul. But I just wish that the show was even more about the actual contestants and about the competition and the performance of drag, and a bit less or a lot less about the boulets and their egos. I don't know if that's how they are in their normal life. It may very well not be, because people who do drag have personas. So the big ego thing might just be a part of the Boulet Brothers personas, and I get that, but it also kind of detracts from the actual show, in my opinion. And I was just really turned off by this whole podcast thing. They literally have a portion in the finale, this doesn't ruin anything, where they have the contestants who are left sit down and do a podcast with them. They don't do the whole thing, like they don't have the whole length of the podcast, but it goes on too long. And for people who are there for the show Dragula, they're not necessarily there for the podcast. And they're two very different things, and it feels out of place. It doesn't work. It's very boring, in my opinion. And it's just, in my opinion, it shouldn't be there. And it kind of feels like this desperate, shameless plug to get people to recognize that they have a podcast and get more fans for that. Like, I understand that if you have the outlet to kind of plug something else you're doing, like you're going to want to do something like that. But as a viewer, as an audience member, I really didn't like it. And I thought it came off as being super tacky and really desperate, as far as like, please, people, please understand that we have a podcast. Please listen to this podcast. Just focus on the show. Like, it's about the show, and the show is so good, and people are really responding to it and have been really responding to it well. Just focus on the show during the show. You know, focus on your podcast during the podcast. And if you want to advertise that, like, you can do it before the show or like after the show and just be like, hey, we also have a podcast. Check this out. But to integrate it into the show the way they did, it really didn't work, and I really disliked it. My wife also did. We started watching a little bit of it, and then we fast-forwarded through it because we were just like, this is really boring and not at all what should be going on in this episode. But, you know, that's just our personal opinions. I'm sure other people also felt that way, but I'm sure there are people who love that aspect of it. So you can let me know those things in the comments. Always open hearing other people's opinions, and this whole thing, just my opinion, obviously. So hopefully more people and more and more people are getting into Dragula. I think it's awesome. I think it's very fun for the most part. Obviously, I have issues with it, but the good vastly outweighs the bad with this. And they're doing an awesome job of getting people more into this performance art. And yeah, it's super, super cool, and it's super entertaining. So highly recommend it. Would love to hear your comments, though, now. Put it in the comments. Normally I will say we can do spoilers, but I'm going to say no spoilers in the comments for this one, because if people are going to go through the show, I don't want to risk people seeing names of contestants and whether they were eliminated or whether they won. I will just say I was definitely happy with the winner of the show. Very happy with the winner of the show, actually. So if you've already seen it, I will just tell you, the person who won, big fan. Love them. Love them. Anyway, thank you everyone for checking this out. Do me a quick favor, hit subscribe if you have not already. I would greatly appreciate that. It is quick, painless, costs you $0, and it keeps me motivated to keep doing this. I really do appreciate that. Regardless, though, I really thank you for taking your time to check this out. And until next time, keep it brutal.